How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to talk about some basketball, a recap of the 2023 NBA playoffs and the play in, my picks that I made, and also some college basketball. But I wanted to start it off here with college men's and women's because I forgot I had these screenshots still. Back when I wanted to do a video talking about it, I got a little busy and I forgot and I never got around to it. Anyways, I bet on UConn for the men's and LSU for the women's. They both ended up winning it all. I believe I picked UConn either right before the Elite Eight took place or right after the Sweet 16 got underway. It was one of the two. I liked UConn before March Madness began, but I really wanted some of the playing field to get narrowed down first before I put a bet in on them because men's is a whole lot more complicated than women's college basketball is. There's usually a lot more teams able to go all the way in men's versus women's, I should say. Also, I was sold on men's Alabama originally or early on, but their depth did worry me a bit. I believe they went out in the Sweet 16, and then after that, I went over everything all over again, and I was more sold on UConn than I ever was on Alabama because I missed something big, which I was a little salty at myself for missing that. And their depth was way better than Alabama's, so that kind of helped me pull the trigger on UConn quickly after Bama went down. And then for the championship game, I called it on Twitter. I said it was a mismatch nightmare for San Diego State. UConn was just so much better in so many areas. It was so obvious to me who was going to win that game once the matchup was finalized in the previous round. And by the way, I am going to block out part of the ticket numbers just in case. I mean, everything has been over for months now for these wagers, but it's just a precaution I've always taken, so that's why those are blacked out. As for the women's, as a fan, I rooted for Iowa, but my financial self and my brain kept screaming at me to put a little bit of money down on LSU instead because of the matchup. And that's when I did that bet for the women's championship right before the championship started. I wish I would have jumped on LSU a hell of a lot sooner because the odds were crazy good at the beginning because South Carolina was the extreme heavy favorite to win it all at the start of the tourney for women's. But once LSU made it to the finals, it was like how it was in the men's. It was just lopsided. It was a lopsided matchup for one of the teams. I couldn't pass it up. The main difference was once it came to the finals, LSU at that point for women's was still getting underdog odds versus UConn men's at the same point was the heavy favorite for that final game. So anyway, that's how college went this year. The NBA, on the other hand, pick wise, went somewhat well. Everything else to me, it seemed like the world was upside down, but I'll get to that later. So in the play-in, I went 4-2 in the 6 play-in games. The numbers that you see is how I scored it, matchup-wise, at the time before the games or the playoff series started that I'm going to show soon. So the 2 games I lost in the play-in, I wasn't shocked that the Raptors lost to the Bulls. The Bulls had the talent, but one of the main reasons why I did pick against the Bulls, they couldn't pull their shit together all season. They beat the Raptors in that one game. It happened. It was a tight matchup that could have went either way. But the one game I was very shocked with was the Thunder and the Pelicans. I knew Zion wasn't going to play because he's a bum, and if he wasn't on a NBA roster or under contract right now, he would be a homeless bum begging for spare change right about now. Regardless of that, the Pelicans still let me down big time. I picked them mainly because of the amount of veterans that they had, especially compared to Oklahoma City. It was a night and day difference. Unfortunately, it was the one play-in game that I did bet on, and it did not work out so well. So we went 4-2 for the play-in, but I really wish I went 5-1 though. I really do. Then the first round of the playoffs came. I went 6-2 out of the first 8 matchups. Lost a coin flip in the Knicks and Cavs series. The 76ers moving on, that was a no-brainer. The Heat and Bucks was a lot closer to me than it was to anybody else. I scored it 4-3. Both matchup wise, and the fact that these two teams were so familiar with each other in the playoffs over the years. I really felt like anything could happen, and it looks like it turned out that way. Unfortunately, I placed too much faith in a team that should have won by a mile on paper, roster wise. A couple years ago, and this was considered a top 10 playoff series upset at the time. I had Miami winning in 2020 versus the Bucks in the playoffs. But this year, I just couldn't pull the trigger on it, mainly because of Giannis and Holiday, who they did not have at that time before in 2020. Holiday, at least. But that didn't get me too far this time. And they lost the matchup in the East in the first round. The Celtics won in 6 games, but that should have been a sweep over the Hawks. That was a bit of a warning sign to me. I had the Celtics winning it all going into the playoffs, but the fact that it took them 6 games to close out the Atlanta Hawks was eye-opening, to say the least. As for the Western Conference first round, I was nearly perfect on my bracket. I even got the number of games right for all of the series but one. Can you guess which one it was? It was the Suns and Clippers, because Kawhi is another bum. I had the Suns in 6 in that series, but they won in 5. Everything else in the West for the first round was perfect for me. You can either take my word for that, or you can go watch another video, because I can't access my bracket anymore to take a screenshot of that. Despite that, I did some betting on a couple individual games in the first round. Even though I did well on the series picks, those solo games did not turn out well. LeBron let me down big time in one of them. I actually did a video ranting about that game, but my takeaway from the first round was Denver. I had Celtics and Warriors going to the finals before the playoffs started. After I watched Denver play in the first 2 games against the Timberwolves, I said to myself, Denver's going to the finals. And obviously that ended up happening. I mean, the way Denver finished the regular season, they were trending down horribly. I didn't think they could overcome that so easily, but they did. It was like a whole new team. They went up 3-0 against Minnesota. I had them in 5 before it started. Minnesota got game 4, and I barely got that series exactly right. I thought they were going to sweep Minnesota midway through that series. Denver just looked like a whole new team, and I said fuck everybody else in the West at that point. In the second and third round here, I was surprised the Warriors lost to the Lakers in the second round, and the Celtics losing to the Heat in the third round. I couldn't even comprehend it. I know the matchup was tight on how I scored it, but that's part of the reason why I'm doing this video now versus when the finals were over. If you only knew what I know statistically, you would say the NBA is rigged. I'm not saying that. After all, this is not the NFL. That one NBA ref that rigged NBA games hasn't been a ref in 20 years. What I'm trying to say is, imagine trying to get to the moon, but instead of using a rocket built by NASA, and a bunch of parts made in Taiwan, you're using a stick that's attached to a bottle rocket to try and make it the 239,000 mile journey when that bottle rocket just ain't gonna go past 50 feet. But yet, Erik Spoelstra found a way. He found a fucking way. And I mean that towards them making it to the finals. That was a team that should not have beat the Celtics under any circumstances. And I'm not exaggerating here. That was the worst team to even make it to the finals ever. And it wasn't even close. Like I said, if you only knew what I knew, that bottle rocket Nassau comparison is the best way I can shortly explain it to you. Even the 1999 New York Knicks run to the finals, when they were also an 8 seed, doesn't even compare. This Miami team was horrible. We have never seen a run like that in NBA history, and I'm hoping that we won't, because it burned everybody. The casinos walked away with entire banks. They got rich off of everybody because Miami just kept on taking out favorites left and right in the East and made it look somewhat easy. I mean, they beat Milwaukee in 5. No one saw that coming, not even fucking Nostradamus. Anyways, so my series pick record for the 2023 NBA playoffs was 11-4 out of 15 series. I narrowed down the 4 most likely champs pretty early. Miami just should not have beat both the Celtics and Bucks, but they did because of a bunch of bums that pretty much let them, especially coaching wise for the Celtics. Anyways, I hope we never see a NBA postseason like this ever again. I mean, there was 4 road teams that won a series in the first round. That never happens in the NBA. Home court is usually king in the playoffs, but not this year. Erik Spoelstra cut right through some of the home court statistics that have held up for the most part of the last 30 years, the last 3 decades. Shit like that just doesn't happen. Anyways, that's all I got for today. Leave a rating on the video, comment down below, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.